Hello, everybody, and good evening. Welcome to Nerdrevolt Gamergate 27. Sad puppies proven right, remain sad. I am your host, Brian Martinez, and I am joined by the Honey Badgers. I will quickly go around and introduce them. We have Allison Tiemann.
Hello.
We have Rachel Edwards.
Hey, everybody.
We have Hannah Wallen. Hannah.
Oh, still slave to the mute button.
Slave to the mute button. And Mad Cat.
Rawr.
Rawr.
Flat
And
rawr.
we also have some guests, the Sad Puppies. So there's a lot of zoology going on in today's show. The Sad Puppies are Brad. Say hello, Brad.
Hello.
Kate.
Hello.
And Sarah. And
Hello.
I'm going to ask that because you guys know who we are, and you're probably sick of hearing about us, but I will give the floor to Brad, Kate, and Sarah to tell us a little bit about themselves, just so we know a little bit about who they are and what they do. So, Brad, go ahead.
Actually, I'm going to say ladies first. Kate, why don't you start, and then we'll do Sarah, and then we'll do me.
That sounds reasonable since I'm the minnow in this group. I'm an author who got into this by being a friend of Sarah's, and things sort of happened. I have a few books out. I am nowhere near the league of Brad or Sarah. And I do have a sense of humour and a sense of the ridiculous. Sarah, your turn.
Hi, I'm Sarah Hoyt, and I'm a white Mormon male, as you can tell from my voice and accent. No, really. I'm a writer. I have 23 novels out. My first novels, because I had a misspent youth taking degrees in things like literature, my first novels were considered literary and actually made the Locus recommend list, something that makes me want to hide under the bed right now. And but they never went any further because there is this whiff of nonconformity around me. I don't know why. And I pretty soon realized that I had to keep my real opinions to myself or be blacklisted. Eventually, I told my husband I was going to walk away. He told me to wait one more year. In that time, Bayan and Indy both happened, so I could continue my career without staying, shall we say, muzzled, to go with the theme. And so when Sad Puppies happened, it was sort of like hearing someone else say what I was thinking out loud, and someone else who wasn't afraid to make a lot of noise and get out there. When they emptied the slop spot on Larry, I got really upset. And being, well, my husband calls me an excitable Latina, and he says it affectionately. I got into the fray. When Brad offered to take my place, I was supposed to take this year of Sad Puppies, but I got very ill. Brad offered to take my place, and then the nominations results came out right after I had had major surgery, when I was supposed to be staying in bed and being calm. And after seeing them turn on Brad, I didn't stay in bed and I wasn't calm. And that's why I'm here.
Wow. Okay, go ahead, Brad. Tell us about yourself, and then we'll get into a brief overview of what the Sad Puppies are and the history.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to say that Kate and Sarah are awesome, and I would never ever want Sarah to get up out of her bed and come after me for any reason whatsoever. I think it would be a bad idea. I think at this point, with Sad Puppies, the way to boil it down to a few words would just be to say that yes, some nonconformists decided to become. Oops, I think I lost me for a second. Can you hear me still?
I think that you just had a brief battle with the mute button, but continue. Some
Oops,
nonconformists.
okay. I apologize. It's 3 a.m. here, and I'm a little technically challenged. So anyway, some nonconformists, us, decided to vocally say, "Hey, all you nonconformists who are interested in science fiction literature, you have the ability to participate in this thing. We think the more participation that happens, the better, because this thing has been kind of co-opted by a certain insider group that has some biases, but it's still a democracy, so let's get everybody involved in the democracy." And we were wildly successful. We got tons of people involved. The question was asked earlier: how many sad puppies are there actually? My guess of it is it's anywhere between maybe 500 and 1,000 people who would raise their hands and say, yes, we are sad puppies. It could be a bigger number than that. We really have no idea. I can tell you, though, specifically that in one of the categories for the awards, 1,200 people put down votes on Tony Weisskopf, who is our editor at Baen, and a further 700 people put down votes on Sheila Williams, who is one of the big editors at Daw Books. So between those two numbers, you can arrive at almost 2,000 people. Now, I'm not going to try to claim every single one of those as a sad puppy, but as we get into the broadcast, I'm going to be talking about these numbers in contrast, and you'll kind of see why. But anyway, we wanted to get things shaken up. We wanted the status quo to be rattled, so to speak, and I think we were way more successful than anybody thought we'd be, even us. And of course, that completely pissed off people who are used to things being predictable and very scripted and very according to the rules as they make them in their social circles. And when that didn't happen, they completely lost their shit and started to promptly shit all over people, including me and Sarah and Larry and everybody else involved, and they started shitting on the people on the slate, and they started spreading that shit out into the media, which I'm sure everyone involved with Gamergate knows how that works. And so yeah, that's what it's been, and we can obviously talk more about all that's gone down in the last 72 hours.
Yeah, well, I would like to get a little bit more background. I apologize if I repeat anything. I had some serious technical difficulties while you were doing the rundown. So just to give some basics for the people who are tuning in and may not know, the Hugos are science fiction awards. They're supposed to go to essentially they're the People's Choice Awards. That's correct, right, Brian or Brad?
In theory, they're supposed to be the People's Choice Awards. But one of the core contentions of Sad Puppies is that the theory was not matching the reality.
Yeah, and but there is a democratic component to it in which people can purchase memberships for about $20 each.
$40 actually.
$40,
yeah,
and they can vote for the Hugos. And
right.
And apparently this year, because of the Sad Puppies slate, and what they mean by the slate is that they choose a bunch of authors that they feel should win in each category. Could you tell us a little bit about how you chose those authors? Did you choose based on political affiliation?
I did not. I think in Sad Puppies 1 and 2, which were the previous iterations for last year and the year before, it definitely was conservative people for the most part. But of course it was being done as a lark. I think this was the first year we actually really got organized in like a determined, coordinated fashion, and for me, just because I had an interview with Wired magazine, and Amy, the reporter who interviewed me, asked me, how do you classify yourself? I classify myself as a classical liberal, so I didn't want this to be just a bunch of conservative authors. I thought, I know people across the spectrum who are doing good work, who might fall into what I call the blind spots, just because it's very, very difficult to stand out enough so that you register on the radar. And I thought, so I'm going to cast a wide net. I'm going to ask a lot of people to throw up some names, and so I went on my blog and I announced that I was going to do it. and said, everybody give me feedback in the comments, and they started to give me feedback in the comments. I started getting email, and again, this just wasn't Sarah or Kate. They were certainly involved in the email conversations. So it was kind of coming in from all over. Some of it was publicly visible, some of it wasn't. Once we had a good list of people that had done stories and books, then it came down to trying to identify, which ones had been repeatedly pointed out. Meaning there was numerous people who were enthusiastic about this story or that book or whatever. And then, of course, with the editors, a lot of that just came down to editors that we and a lot of the commenters thought were deserving and maybe had been overlooked. Again, Tony and Sheila and Ann Sowards, who does Jim Butcher's books and many other people's books. And then we put that together, and I think we had between 3 and 5 items in each of the categories, and then we put it up online and said, okay, here's our suggested list. This is our recommendation, and here's how you vote. You can vote as a supporting member, which is only $40. Now, in my opinion, frankly, $40 is way too much money, but in WorldCon's scheme, it's the cheap end of the memberships. So for $40, you have the right to participate in this voting process. And like I said, we threw it out there to the whole world, and we said, hey, the tent flap is wide open. Come on in. We don't care, who you are. Come in the door. And that was back in, I think it was February when that went live. And then from February up until the beginning of April was when people were able to nominate for the ballot, meaning so there's kind of 2 phases to it. The first phase is the nominations. That's when the actual contents of the final ballot are assembled, and everybody's recommending everything. Everybody who has a membership in either the past WorldCon or the current WorldCon or the future WorldCon can participate in the nomination. So nominations are flowing in like crazy from all kinds of different sources. And come April, they released the final ballot, and I think everybody, both us and our opponents, were very, very surprised, and in our opponent's case, very, very unpleasantly surprised that we actually did as well as we did. And because most of the sad puppies, I think maybe 65% or better, made it onto the final ballot, which was way more than I thought we were going to get. But at the same time, I was like, wow, okay, we really got some people motivated to jump in on this thing.
Okay, I'm just going to interject for a second.
Sure.
When you say that the sad puppies made it on the ballot, what it sounds like is that your nominations made it on the ballot, right? Not
Yes.
specifically people associated with you either politically or personally.
Yeah, the people that were on the ballot, the works, came in from all over the place. They were on the slate that we put together, which is the list of recommendations. We said, here's who we think would be good in each of these categories. And if you agree with us, obviously, it'd be great if you put these names in there.
Yeah. I just wanted to clarify because there does seem to be some confusion that I've seen even in Gamergate forums. Some people saying that it was the sad puppies nominated themselves, and that's not the case. What you guys did was you said, what are good works? And you look for people who were recommended over and over again, and you made a slate. And these individuals were not necessarily associated with you politically.
May I?
Sure, go ahead.
It wasn't a slate. This is very important because it's one of the things they keep throwing at us with a very specific meaning. They say, we made a slate and we asked people to robotically vote for exactly the list we gave them. I have a fan conference, and I just yelled at them because I said the easiest way to get you guys to not to do something is telling you to do it. If we had ordered people to vote robotically for a slate, there wouldn't have been a single vote for those people. What Brad did was the individualists failed to organize consistently. So what Brad did, I think in his blog, he asked for recommendations. I linked to that blog post, and I think Larry did too. And people came up with this humongous list, and the ones who were more popular, Brad said, okay, this seems worthy of consideration. Why don't you people look at it and consider voting for them? That was all. Frankly, you could have dropped us with a feather that people actually got nominated. We did not expect anywhere near the success rate. And yeah, we had everything from socialists to people who have no clue what their politics are. It wasn't a political slate, and no, none of us were on it. Well, were you, Kate?
Oh no, I wasn't on it.
I didn't remember if originally you had been suggested for fan writer, but I don't think so.
No, it was Cedar and Amanda who were on it, and Dave.
Larry, people put Larry up regardless of that, and Larry recused. He said he didn't want to be nominated.
Yeah, I know Sarah wasn't on there for any works. I had people tell me they voted for me, but I didn't have myself on there anywhere because I didn't feel comfortable being the guy running the thing. Obviously, it wasn't about me. I wasn't in it to get anything out of it for me. So I wasn't on there. People have called it a slate. People have called it a list. The thing I think, and Sarah's right to point this out, and it's right there on the original blog post. It was a list of recommendations. There's been a lot of hand-waving and rhetoric about, ooh, it was so bad because they demanded that people vote the whole thing in lockstep. And one, that wasn't true. We never, ever demanded anything. In fact, I'd like to say this again because this can't be said often enough. Sad Puppies demanded nothing. We instructed nothing. There were no do this or else. There was no threatening. It was a recommendation list. Now, obviously, we were being somewhat irreverent in that we were approaching it from the standpoint of nonconformity. We wore that on our sleeves. Yeah, we're nonconformists. We're not here to represent the status quo. There's no bones about that. But we never demanded anything, and we certainly never threatened anything.
Just to clarify completely. So essentially, the situation is you asked for nominations, you threw the net far and wide, and you nominated the ones that got the biggest repeats, essentially.
Yeah, I tried to watch for that because I got a pretty big influx, and if it was just onesies and twosies, that wasn't enough. It had to be several or many repeats of the same story, the same book, the same person. And so once I had that, I built a spreadsheet so I could actually go through and tally up, how many times certain items kept coming up over and over, and the ones that were at the top were the ones that I kept ultimately.
Yeah, and I think that needs to be clarified because some of the way, just to be frank, the way you talk about it, it makes it sound almost like these people are sad puppies when in fact they're just people who were recommended to the sad puppies to be part of this list.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
It was a recommendation list, and again, there was no like complete perfect way to do this when we put it together. It was a net that went out in several different mediums, Facebook and my blog and emails and so on and so forth, and I wasn't being like extremely filtering about where these things came from. It was just, somebody recommended this, somebody recommended that, and like I said, I built the spreadsheet and just started kind of keeping a tally of how many times a certain thing came up, whether it was a fanzine or an editor, or it was a book or a story or anything like that. And the things that ended up on our suggestion blog that went up were the things that were multi-suggestion, meaning they'd come up several times and people had said, yeah, let's, we like this. and again, the people that I was getting these suggestions from, it was just whoever wanted to.
So essentially, it was a fan recommendation list.
I saw it as a total fan recommendation list, because that's where we were getting recommendations from, was the fans. And
I think that's really important to point out, because there is the narrative that is being put that you guys basically just appointed yourself, or people who are politically affiliated, or people who are personally affiliated, and that's not the case at all. And from what I'm hearing about your process, albeit you're right, there's flaws to that process, but there are flaws to almost every process. Pure democracy is very hard to achieve, and actually I think it's a credit to you that you are thinking about the flaws of even your own process. So I really doubt the people who voted no award were thinking that at all.
Well, that's to me, that's the bigger irony of the no award crowd is, in order to combat the evilness of the sad puppies who were so bad and evil for having the quotes slate, that's the big evil word. They doubled down. They said, okay, we're gonna not even bother to vote for people at all. We're gonna vote against people, and they succeeded spectacularly in voting against people rather than voting for people.
Yes, and just to clarify some of the history of the Hugos, there have been slates proposed by other people before. Just give us if you could, just give us a little bit of a rundown of the history of previous slates, or even just an overview.
I think I do want to point out, the magazine Locus is often regarded, or maybe sometimes derided, as it's the newspaper of the science fiction field, the professional community. And Locus every year does a recommendation list. That's no secret. That's been done forever. And bloggers are always putting out lists of, these are the books I read and I love these people and we should get them on the Hugo ballot. And the political partisans are always whining about, we don't have enough of demographic XYZ on the ballot. We need to make sure XYZ shows up on the ballot. So, everybody is recommending everything, and it's high and low. It's other writers, it's editors, it's Locus. So nothing we did was out of the ordinary. Again, I think the only thing that surprised everybody, including us, was the release of the final ballot, just because there were so many of our recommendations that made it. I thought we'd get maybe one or two in each category, and we ended up getting more like 3 or 4, and in some cases 5, which to me was very, very surprising, because again, we had no idea how many people were actually going to participate in any of this, and they participated, and the ballot came out. And that's when people started getting angry.
Yeah, which is remarkable, because, like you said, there's people making recommendation lists here, there, everywhere, and I assume that there were individuals who were even pushing even harder on particular political angles, whereas the way you've described your process was apolitical and basically based on whoever recommended something to you.
Right. Yeah. It was very apolitical. Something I tried to do too, and I wasn't successful in every case, just because I have a life, I have a job, I have a family, I have other things to do other than this. But I did try to reach out and contact people as we were, putting it together. And I said, hey, we want to recommend you. Are you okay with that? Or, would you have a problem with if we're going to put you on this? And we didn't get everybody. I didn't end up contacting everybody, but I did make an effort. Some people have been using that as a point of criticism, that you didn't contact them or you didn't have permission. And George R.R. Martin shot that down immediately way back when the controversy broke. He said, nobody should have to worry about who recommended them, and nobody should have to worry about being on anybody's recommendations, because the recommendations have been going on forever. And nobody worries about Locus recommending them. Nobody worries about any of the other writers or any of the other people who are involved recommending anybody. It magically became terrible when we did it, obviously, but that's a recurrent theme with sad puppies. They can do it all they want. We're bad when we do it. That's pretty much. I mean, I wish I could put that on a T-shirt.
May I?
Yeah, go ahead, Sarah. Go.
They are aristocrats. They have privileges that are not for us common folk. We're supposed to bow our heads and say, "Yes, lady, yes, my lord." Ha 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 ha.
Rules are for the little people.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I think that's very true. I think frankly, with a lot of the complaints that came out, I think it really did boil down to the ruling class of science fiction getting very, very upset that a bunch of little people decided to change the script. The predictability of it was completely destroyed, and they were very, very unhappy with us for that, because you're not supposed to mess with the status quo. You're not supposed to change the script. And it's okay if they want to make a change here and there for the sake of one of their friends, or maybe somebody they think should deserve something. But if somebody off script comes in and changes that, well, then it's terrible.
Yeah, but just to interject, Brad, it doesn't sound like you changed anything at all. All that you changed is the fact that you have a certain amount of popularity and were capable of reaching, not even necessarily telling people to vote for the selections that the people that were recommended to you by the fans, but just saying, read them, make your own decision, and vote. Do it. You had the reach that you built. I assume you built yourself independently to be able to do this. I'm sure that is a huge slap in the face to people who are really much more about maintaining a particular establishment and a particular hierarchy of who gets to be able to do this kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it was from my standpoint, I think they were very unhappy with the radical egalitarianism of the whole thing. It was people from outside the establishment, not outside the business, obviously, but people from outside the establishment taking a very active part in the process for a change. Again, I would also say the other thing that I think we were 100% different about was all of this was publicly transparent. It was important to me to make sure that all of this was done completely out in the open. Something else, once you get into the inner workings of science fiction publishing, at least traditional publishing, is you learn very quickly that the awards have been the object of any number of campaigns, if we can use that word, campaigns by individual authors, campaigns by publishers to support individual authors, campaigns by publishers to support multiple authors, campaigns by fans of specific authors to get those authors on. Campaigning is not new. It's just usually done behind closed doors. And I didn't want anything about Sad Puppies to be done behind closed doors. I've always hated that they pretend that the award is supposed to be for the quality of the work, and yet you go to the parties at Worldcon and elsewhere, and all the old-timers tell stories about how no, this year so-and-so got their friends together and they got themselves on the ballot, or this other year this publisher got all of their employees a membership, and that's how they got a given book or a set of books on the ballot. You hear all these stories enough, and you start to realize that the supposed integrity, ironclad integrity of no campaigning, that was just a public nicety. That was the patina. But once you got into the meat of it, you realized the patina was garbage. Everybody was campaigning all over the place, and I didn't want to do that. I didn't want it to be a little sneaky thing that went around behind closed doors. I said, no, that's crap. We're going to do this out in front. And I know Sarah's got some things to say, so I'll shut up now.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Actually, I'm not sure I so much have something to say. I was just trying to get background on this. I felt really bad about them going after Brad because he's more idealistic than I am. I had already come out of the political closet, and by the way, I find it hilarious that through this I've been tagged with everything, including fascist. I am a small L indeed, small L libertarian. My positions are roughly akin to the founding fathers. So, I'm going to take over the world and leave it strictly alone. I refuse to force people to do anything. So, but when I came out of the closet politically, I got all that thrown at me. You're extreme right wing and you're racist and homophobic, both of which are so hilarious, and all this stuff. Because racist, I would have to disavow myself, and as for homophobic, for reasons known only to the psychiatrist I don't have, I keep writing gay male characters, which, yes, Hannah, probably plays into the fact that they keep claiming I'm a man. As you can hear, I'm a man with a very strange voice. I've also been told that as someone born and raised in the US, I just don't have the perspective to understand this. And then when they realized they put their foot in it up to the knee, they accused me of not knowing the history of the US, which, considering, part of my degree was years of history of the US, is kind of funny. And it's just a bunch of insanity. So because this had all been thrown at me, and I had lost so-called friends who just walked away or who joined the jeering, I wasn't surprised when that happened to Brad. But not being surprised that happened to Brad does not equal taking it calmly. It's the same thing. The award ceremony and the ridiculous stuff at the award ceremony did not surprise me. It just infuriated me.
Okay,
I was not
before we
upset.
get into that, I just want to preface this by saying, everybody listening, so we've established what the Sad Puppies did prior to the award ceremony. They asked for recommendations from the fans. Based on which ones they got the most recommendations for, they created a list, and then they recommended that the people who went to their blogs, enjoyed their writing, maybe, or even the people that they knew, just vote if they like the stuff on the list. This is, like Brad said, this is radical egalitarianism, and this is, again, this sounds like the most transparent of these endeavors in relation to the Hugos in its history. So this is what's going in. The list is apolitical. It's based on what the fans considered merit. It didn't have an association with the Sad Puppies. The Sad Puppies didn't nominate themselves. They just simply nominated the recommendations given to them. And then this is what caused such incredible anger at the Hugos. And I just wanted to preface this so people understand. This is the list that caused such a divisive, angry atmosphere at the Hugos, and apparently forced people who are supposedly non-political to vote categories without any award at all. So they essentially said, we're not awarding this because of this radically egalitarian, non-political list of fan favorites that the Sad Puppies put forward as a possibility got in there. We're going to not vote. We're going to vote no award because of this list. That's what happened. And
I think that's pretty accurate. The analogy I use is that the Hugo Awards are like a big chocolate cake. And every year for the past 20 years or so, more or less the same crowd has been allowed to slice up and divide the chocolate cake. This year, we, the radical egalitarians, came in and we managed to have a pretty strong hand in how the chocolate cake got divided. Well, the people who they basically feel they're entitled to be the deciders. We get to decide how the cake is divided, not you, we. Well, they had a tizzy fit, so they took the chocolate cake and they threw it on the floor to make sure nobody gets any chocolate cake. That's pretty much how it went down.
Actually, I see it more as, oh no, the barbarians are at the gate. What will we do? So they burned their own village down.
I think that works too.
because they are incredibly stupid. This must be said somewhere. They have gotten so used to their little clubhouse and no one questioning them. I don't mean they're inherently stupid or low IQ. I mean they have gotten used not being challenged.
I call it deliberate stupid.
Yes, and since they are never challenged, they have convinced themselves that whatever the group comes up with, they're absolutely certain of everything, and that believing what the group believes makes them, and I have heard this said at conventions, the good people. They really should study the history of creatures who are called the good people or the good folk. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, it does seem to be. Once you stop your moral questioning of yourself, that tends to be a dark hole that you tumble down. When you start patting yourself on your back and just assuming you can do everything because you are the good people.
Well, what I've noticed, and this is just my opinion, I came across this term over the summer because I've always over the last year or so I've tried to figure out, well, what do we call this emerging phenomenon? And I think I saw it in a British newspaper. It's called virtue signaling, and it's connected to, or it's part of what we could call slacktivism or clicktivism, and it basically is a I would call it a psychological phenomenon where people have, I think, a natural desire to want to do what they would consider good. Let's put some rabbit ears around the words good. Or decent, or so they're well-meaning. I don't think it's malicious necessarily, but what they're doing is they're taking the easy way out. They're thinking that if I just go on Twitter and let's say, for instance, some poor celebrity has screwed up and said something stupid, people will flash mob that person on Twitter and get all angry and say, oh, you're a horrible this or that or whatever, and they will walk away from the experience thinking, yes, I've fought the righteous fight against the bad whatever, whatever we're fighting against this week or this month, or excuse me, and it has no impact on the real world whatsoever. What they've done, though, is they've signaled to the rest of the social media sphere, aha, I am one of the good people. I am in the correct crowd. I have signaled to everybody that I have done the correct thing, and yet they've done nothing that requires you to get off your butt and actually make the world a better place. Get your hands dirty. It's a very cheap and easy and seductive way to try to convince yourself that you're on the right side of whatever, and that you're actually making a difference when you're really not. It's all about you. It's your self-image. You are looking at yourself and wanting to perceive yourself a certain way, and so you take the easy road instead of actually going out and rolling up your sleeves.
I actually, before we continue, I just wanted to look at one of the nominations, that you received and ended up being no awarded at the Hugo Awards. It's Best Editor long form, and what's interesting to me about Best Editor long form is that you've been accused of wanting to keep the Hugos white and male, and Best Editor long form, the nominations on your radical egalitarian fan recommendations are, and I'm probably going to butcher these names, Tony Weisskopf from Bain, Jim Mintz, Annie Sowards, and Sheila Gilbert. So you have 3 women and 1 man from your list of Best Editor long form, and they rewarded this in order to keep the Hugos from being infiltrated by people who didn't want diversity, according to their narrative. So they had the opportunity to award, and they had like a 40, just basic mathematical odds of 75% chance of awarding it to a woman, and they would rather award it to no one. How is that promoting diversity? That sounds like it's...
Yeah, that's... I think... Oh, go ahead, Kate.
It's not promoting diversity. What it's promoting is that they rule, and that they'll say anything they can, anything they want, and they'll make it sound nice and pretty, But what it comes down to is that if you don't follow their line, lock, stock and barrel, they will stab you in the back and throw you under the bus. If they're in a nice mood.
The other part of it is that they're very interested in a superficial diversity. They are very interested in whether you can tan, how many of your ancestors could tan, do you have exotic features? And by the way, this doesn't really associate with any real races. Some of the people on that side who claim to be some race or other are less minority races than I am or than Larry is. And all this stuff, they want all these exterior markers of diversity and absolute lockstep conformity of thought. God forbid you actually can tan. Hi, I can tan. In Portugal, where the bar is much lower, I was routinely assumed to be an African immigrant. I'm paler now because I spend most of my time in the basement writing, but it's still pretty obvious I'm not standard Caucasian. And, you know, because I don't toe their party line, I'm actually way more offensive. The bar that I found I had to clear while I was in the political closet was not... must not speak of politics. I did that. It was must endorse whatever the insanity of the minute is. The insanity of the minute right now is non-binary sexuality, whatever the heck that means. And, you know, if you don't fit that box exactly, even if you have totally libertarian beliefs that say, you know, I don't care if you do it with a manatee in the front yard, provided it's not my front yard and my manatee, they still get really upset at you, and they will destroy you if they can.
I just wanted to point something out. More and more, it feels like so-called social justice is not really morality. My understanding of morality is self-criticism, self-doubt, trying to do as little amount of harm as possible, trying to question your own prejudices and your own opinions, and just being, trying to try to act with integrity. And what I'm seeing from social justice wars is less about morality, and it seems to be more about manners. So they have these incredibly complex lexicon of rules and words and things you have to do and things you can't do and ideas that are verboten. And it sounds more like something approaching where you put your guest, whether it's above the salt or below the salt at your meal. And it's more like, it sounds more like this dance of manners than it is a real solid morality. And yeah, I can see Brad is unmuting. And Sarah, go ahead.
You're absolutely right. And people will come down even on people who are openly on their side for, you know, they didn't carefully think through their words. They didn't. For instance, I wrote a post, and I want to point out right now, it had nothing to do with being trans or being gay, because, you know, I don't know why, and this is a problem because I don't know why, but I don't have a psychiatrist and can't afford one. Most of my friends are gay, and I've had a couple of friends who are trans, but, and yes, they're going to say, oh, but she just said, I have friends. Well, yes, not everyone is. But I did a post in which I said men and women are physically different, okay? Which I don't think there can be any argument. And I was actually talking about the fact my kid at 12 was expected to have a processing of time. Like, he was supposed to understand turning the work in 2 weeks, which boys can't and women can. So it's a huge benefit to girls. They develop that sense faster. And the schools give this huge benefit to them in middle school, which I don't exactly have a problem with. I have a problem with blaming the boys for something that's not their fault. So I was talking about something that's accepted science, it's physiological. I did a post saying men and women are different. They took the title of the post And, you know, the insanity on Twitter was like, she's transphobic, she's homophobic, this post made me want to throw up. And it's, you know, I couldn't live on the other side because you have to watch everything you say and everything you do, and I couldn't live with that.
There's no presumption of good faith.
Oh, that's hugely important. And I think, you know, Sarah's experience mirrors mine. I know that's why I've migrated in my political evolution. You know, in my 20s, when especially, you know, my wife and I were living in Seattle, Washington, which is extremely progressive and wears that on its sleeve, and was voting for Clinton and generally just kind of floating in the sea of general small L liberal politics. But over time, I've really changed a lot of my thinking, and a lot of it has been reactive to this expectation that you have to watch every single thing you do or say because there's no benefit of the doubt. There is no absolutely no generosity in this paradigm. It is intentionally seeking for that moment when you screw up in the internal dialogue of the paradigm, and then they've got you. They're going to sandbag you, and you're terrible, and you're going to be forced to endure this really Orwellian series of mea culpas, and you've got to, you know, march into the public square and rip your shirt and denounce yourself and denounce your evil and on and on and on. And it's gotten worse, I think, as time has gone on. I mean, in the last 15 years especially, it's gotten ridiculous. The lengths to which people on social media are being expected to, again, perform this very Orwellian, quasi-Maoist, Marxist style renunciation and denunciation and so on and so on.
I'd actually say Stalinist, but that's just me.
I'd go with Maoist, but, you know, I don't like Mao, so, you know, that's okay.
Yeah, I'm actually really astounded because you managed to mute Brad, Kate, when you spoke.
I have power.
Yeah, that was actually pretty remarkable. But I wanted to maybe get a bit into the Hugos and the reactions and what transpired. Just an overview. A lot of the people who opposed the Puppies' radical egalitarian fan-chosen list decided to vote no award and then cheered as these individuals who had been selected based on merit by a lot of people had to go home empty-handed. I'm sure that was not a very pleasant experience for them. But anyway, what are your guys' reactions to what happened at the Hugos?
May I?
Sure, go ahead.
It wasn't even the cheering. I am used to the idea that these people will act like infantile, spoiled children. It was the pre-show. The pre-show was utterly appalling. I didn't watch it, but I was watching my friends live report it in my conference. And Brad might want to explain the asterisk, because if I do, I'm going to start screaming obscenities in Portuguese, and no one needs that. But they had this. First of all, one of the things that I found hilarious is that a lot of our friends who were close by said, a lot of our fans said, hey, we have a membership, and it's trivial to get a one-day pass or whatever, so we'll drive over and we attend. And it was the first time they attended Worldcon, which is in many ways a dying con with elderly people, okay? And I mean, I'm 53, and when I go, I'm one of the young Turks. Well, I'm going to be 53 in November. My husband has ordered me to stop adding a year to my age. But, because it upsets him because he's the same age. But we, you know, they went there, and they expected, this is the award of the film. They expected some pomp, some circumstance. I didn't, because I've watched these. The entire production values and the way people behave is at the level of a middle school presentation. I won the Prometheus Award in 2011, and while I was the only one who was properly dressed for an award there because I decided that was incumbent upon me, everyone else was in jeans and t-shirt, and I was in black dress and pearls. Yay! And I knew it was going to be that way. But they had some gravitas. They spoke of the meaning of the award, of why they had chosen the book. There was some serious discussion in the Hugo Awards. It's always like a middle school variety show, and there was nothing there. So they were upset about that chintzy feel of it wasn't professional. But on top of that, they had this little skit where they defended the Hugo from the invaders. And by that time, I was already boiling. And then they got to the asterisk part, and I'll let Brad talk about that, or Kate if she wishes.
Well, the asterisk started as, oh, well, there are so many firsts this time around. We've got the largest number of votes ever, the largest number of nominations ever, the largest number of registrations ever, all these exclamation marks, so we'll arrange them to look like an asterisk, which of course also means that it was a rather dubious award in the first place. At which point Toni Weisskopf walked out, and she is a classy lady. Anything that offends her sufficiently that she walks out is pretty darn bad. I'm quite sure they didn't... Sorry, Brad?
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say that I am quite sure they didn't stop to think about the design of their asterisks, particularly sitting that beside the rather phallic Hugo Award. Because, you know, it does start getting rather suggestive and extremely appropriate for what they did to the Hugo shortly afterwards.
Oh my.
Yeah, the asterisk, you know, I agreed with, and Toni wasn't the only one to walk out. Other people walked out too. Yeah, other people walked out too, because it was pretty obvious at that point that even if people had been allowed to get trophies, that they were going to send the message very strongly that these were not legitimate. Again, the people who are used to cutting the cake up, they were mad at the fact that they weren't allowed to own the process the way they usually own it. And so they had a fit, and they were going to make sure that no matter what, the whole world knew that these were not legitimate Hugo Awards. At which point, Toni and others said, okay, you know, if people are going to disrespect us in this manner, we're not going to sit here and take it. And so they got up and they walked out. And I think that was the appropriate response, frankly, because at that point, the so-called professional proceedings had descended way below the level of professionalism. It had now become completely middle school, and it really got middle school when they started announcing, of course, no award in this category, no award in that category, and people started cheering. You know, obviously they were cheering, "Hey, we beat the bad guys." And in the process, here's what I want to try to emphasize, and then I'm sure Sarah and Kate can pick up on this, is ever since the controversy started way back in, I think again, it really kicked off in April, the Hugos have had a big giant eyeball from the real world peering in on this ordinarily little strange world called science fiction. And this is an inexperienced eyeball. It doesn't understand the inside nature of everything. Yes, somebody says the Eye of Sauron. That's kind of appropriate, actually. You know, there's this big, glaring, unblinking eye of the real world peering into the Hugos that normally isn't there. And so they're doing a very inside baseball thing, completely oblivious to the fact that to the outside world, this looks completely different. It looks terrible. One of the people that attended for the first time was a guy named Michael Rothman. Michael Rothman did I thought it was actually kind of heart-wrenching post on Facebook where he said, I'm a first-time attendee. I brought my 2 sons with me. They're teenagers. I wanted to show them what this was all about. They got to play cards with Brandon Sanderson and meet some of their heroes, men and women who had written books that the sons liked. And of course, they had read the contents of the Hugo ballot, and they had picked out some winners, and they had voted, and they were invested in this proceeding. Now, of course, being older boys, they knew that their choices wouldn't necessarily win, but still, hey, they had skin in the game, and they were extremely shocked by the fact that all these supposed grown-ups around them were basically cheering the fact that whole categories had been burned to the ground, that there were no winners. Again, people had voted against people, and at the end of it, they walked out and said, "You know what? This whole fandom thing, this doesn't seem like this is for me." And that's the canary in the coal mine right there, with Worldcon and with the so-called culture of fandom. When you have these young guys that are the future of everything, and they come in and they see your so-called most prestigious award, and you're celebrating it being burned to the ground, and you're celebrating people being voided out of existence, that message just boomed out into the universe for everybody to see. And I really don't think the people who decided to go no award as a weapon understand that message that was sent out there. And I'll let Sarah or Kate chime in on that with their opinions.
Or I can actually, if you guys don't want to add to that, I can pull another thing out of this whole thing. I wanted to look at best short story, which also got no reward because of this situation. And again, once again, for those listening in, this list that the Sad Puppies made was fan recommendations. It was apolitical, and it wasn't people associated with the Sad Puppies politically or personally. And correct me if I'm wrong, Brad, you put this together to prove a point about even if it was just you guys nominating, that they would get that the individuals who are controlling the process at the Hugos would get upset because of your politics.
That was Larry's thing with Sad Puppies 1 and 2. Yeah, because he predicted, he called the whole thing, and he wasn't the only one. Several people had said, this is how it's going to go. You watch. If we keep doing this, this is exactly how it's going to go. And he was right. He was proved exactly right. Every single thing he said would happen did happen, including people being, the way I the way I look at it is, it's like, why in the world, if you're angry at your dog, would you go kick the cat? Why in the world, if you're angry at your son, would you go slap your daughter? Basically, they were mad at the fact that we, the Sad Puppies, cut the cake to a certain extent versus them. So what do? They turn around and they punish someone like Sheila. Now, Sheila at DAW had nothing to do with anything. She was just there, and she's been there before. It's not like Sheila's on there for the first time. Sheila's been in the running for this award numerous times. And in fact, Sheila got over 700 votes. And that's historic. That's like, I think, 2 or 3 times more votes than any previous winner in long form, the editor, has ever gotten before. So Sheila, gets this astounding number of votes. It's awesome, right? No, it's not awesome, because the people who consider themselves the propriety police, hey, we're going to decide what's what. They didn't care. They didn't care at all. For them, it was about, no, we want to be right, and we're going to prove it, and we're going to punish everybody, and we're not going to care that they are deserving or not. So again, that goes right back to what Larry predicted would happen, because Larry said, you know what, this is a political award. It's been politicized for a long time. You watch what happens if we try to change the game. And he was right. They completely blew it up. I call it the gunpowder plot. You know, they hated the way Parliament was going, and so they very carefully arranged the barrels of gunpowder, and they blew it up because it wasn't what they thought it should be. Other people were being allowed to cut the cake.
And when you say cut the cake, just simply nominate. And I mean, it's not even. That's almost a too active verb, because all you did was put out a list of fan recommendations and simply did the work, the legwork to get people involved. That's it.
Exactly.
It's much more passive than you. What you did actually was say to the fans, "You go cut the cake."
Pretty much. I mean, I would say that, you know, Sad Puppies, people have been wanting to get involved for a long time, but so often this is a very diffuse, unorganized sentiment, and so it kind of never goes anywhere. You know, it's voter apathy. It's just like in regular politics. You know, when people see Team A and Team B always win, and they would rather there was a Team C and a Team D, they give up. They don't even bother, because they say, you know what, my vote won't matter. Well, I think for the first time, people said, you know what, hey, here's a real chance that maybe my vote will matter. Maybe the independent party will have a chance. And, you know, the establishment said, nope, not going to have it.
There's an illusion of democracy here, because you have the ability to mobilize fans to vote for what they want to see in the Hugos. There's an illusion of democracy, but you proved that that's just an illusion. That no matter what, if you actually try to do the footwork to get people voting, that there's only one party in power, and only that party gets to even make the initial recommendations. And if that doesn't happen, then they'll just say, you know, well, we'll burn the ballot boxes.
Thank you. When I was a child, because I was born and raised in Portugal, I grew up in a one-party state. This is exactly, and towards the time, and I was about 6, so I'm not really cognizant of how this happened, but when I was about 6, suddenly there was an opposition candidate. And I remember my parents talking about how they were even afraid to say they were for the opposition candidate in public. Even though it was, the opposition candidate was basically saying, okay, instead of banning all corporations, we just ban foreign corporations, or, you know, some minor deviation from the doctrine. But everyone was treating it as if, you know, if you support this opposition candidate, because it's the first opposition candidate we've had in decades, you're damned, and we're going to block you off. It's exactly this. What we're seeing from the establishment is a one-party state suddenly seeing an opposition candidate, no matter how unexceptionable, no matter if it's actually in line with what they purport to believe. They're acting like an anthill that was suddenly disturbed. And I hate to say this, and it's going to sound like, okay, it's a dig, but these people are on average 20 years older than I. When you get older, you get set in your ways, and you expect your parade of days and how your year works to be exactly the same all the time. I'm at the edge of that, so I can say this. And a lot of what we saw, notably from the MC of the awards, was, you ruined my party. I've been looking forward to this. How dare you? As if it were their thing, totally theirs to plan. And anyone who does anything different, it's an attack on them, regardless of what we're doing.
Yeah, well said. And I'm glad that I inspired that. It's a good rant.
I think.
Go ahead, Brad.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I was going to say, you know, the entitlement. It's very much an entitlement syndrome. You know, when people get used to having their way, so to speak, on a regular basis, or as a standard course of well, this is just the way it is. I always get to have, my say in it. As soon as other voices start to come into that conversation, they get deeply offended because they're used to being the only voice. They're used to being the only one that gets to have a say. And this year, again, the tables were somewhat turned, and so the way that the entitlement played out was they said, you know what, we're not going to let anybody have anything. We're going to take our ball and go home. We're going to make sure that we send a loud message that nobody else is going to be allowed to be recognized. We're not only going to disrespect you in the the lead up, the pre-ceremony with the asterisk. The asterisk was, again, deeply offensive, and I'm glad Tony walked out on that because I think the asterisk was complete bullshit. But then to be cheering.
Before we continue, could you explain what it means for those of us who may not?
Okay, so the asterisk, really this goes back to sports. It's the Roger Maris asterisk. It's in the legacy of it. It's the way that you coyly signify that an achievement of any kind is not legitimate. You're forced by the rules of the system to put the placard up there with the person's name on it, but you tack a little asterisk on the side of the placard or somewhere visible, and then that becomes a tacit signal to the rest of the world, or at least to the people who are the inside baseball people, that this is not a legitimate achievement. So they bring out these asterisks, and they're like, yeah, we're going to put asterisks on the Hugos this year. And it was just like, oh, really? I think that was even Tony's words, And again, Tony, I want to explain this to people. Tony Weisskopf is a professional's professional. Tony Weisskopf is, in my experience, one of the most professional people in science fiction publishing, period. For Tony Weisskopf to immediately stand up and walk out on this thing, that is, I can't tell you guys on the outside how significant that is. I'm sure Sarah can talk about it some more, but
when I heard of that's when I was so furious for her, because I wasn't there, and I was getting this second hand from the people who were there and were. But again, Tony is really good at keeping a poker face. She works with writers of all political stripes, all lifestyles. All of us love her. I have never, in fact, at one time I got myself, because the other person who walked out was Tony Daniel, who works for her, and he sent me an edit that it wasn't that I disagreed with it, I simply didn't know what to do. And I was dithering because I had no idea how to do what he asked me to do. And she called me and we talked it over, and I realized that what they actually wanted wasn't what I thought they wanted, which should have required the book to be about double and have another subplot. And I thought, this is just weird. So she talked to me. I mean, she puts up with the temperamental Latin writers. She puts up, there are writers who are far more unstable than I am, and I know that sounds weird, but it's true. And she puts up with them too. All of them like her. She's always professional. She's always nice. When I ran into some financial trouble 2 years ago, she sent me the turn-in money for a book I didn't turn in until last month. She is absolutely wonderful, and I couldn't imagine her letting her guard so far off in public as to walk out. I expected her to sit there with a completely blank face and take it, because that's what she would have done. So I can imagine, in addition to the insulting gesture of the asterisk, what went with it in terms of body language and voice to actually force her to walk out. And this is the one thing that makes me absolutely furious. She said, by the way, she didn't walk out in anger. She walked out in utter sadness at what we had come to.
Oh, yeah. Before we continue, I wanted to add to just a mathematical probability. The individuals who put on the Hugo Awards could have not just awarded a Best Editor long form to a woman. These people who say that there's for diversity, But there's also mathematical probability that best short story would have been awarded to a woman if they hadn't burnt that ballot box too. Because there's Goodnight Stars by Annie Billett, Tuesdays with Moleshke the Destroyer by Megan Gray, Totaled by Carrie English, On a Spiritual Plane by Lou Antonelli, A Single Samurai by Steve Diamond. I don't know how I got Dave from that one, but so you have 3 women, 2 men. Mathematical probability: a woman, 2 women, 2 additional women could have been up there receiving a Hugo Award, and they didn't, because these individuals decided that the people, not even the politics of the people on the slate, because these are the list, because these people on the list weren't associated with the Sad Puppies politically. They were, again, fan recommendations. But because of the politics, the people who compiled the list from fan recommendations, and even then, the Sad Puppies, we have a libertarian, a classical liberal, and somebody from Australia. I mean, the politics is across the board. So even there, you can't even say that there's unity within the Sad Puppies politically. So based just on the fact that the politics are more diverse in the Sad Puppies, they decided to burn the ballot boxes down. It's just incredible. And in so doing, there was a highest probability that there would have been 2 additional women up on that stage. And they did this for so-called diversity.
But they weren't the right women.
Well, I mean, were they, like, did they have politics that were anti or in opposition to the politics of the people who were voting on the Hugo? Because I don't know, actually.
Fox Day also recommended them.
Oh, okay.
Oh, well, yeah, this... I would say, yeah, Kate's exactly right. I think what it came down to is they were so eager to punish and evict Theodore Beale, a.k.a. Vox Day, that I don't think they really cared who they burned in the process. Again, the person I point back to, because I can in a very slim sort of way understand a little bit why Tony got the axe. But for them to take down Sheila had 0.0% association with anything with anybody. She just happened to be on a list, and they screwed her. You know, I'm gonna say this. I was immediately contacted the morning after. I'm far ahead of you guys in the Middle East, and so I'm asleep when all this is happening. I had to catch up after the fact. I was immediately contacted by Betsy Wolheim over at DAW, and she very politely was like, please don't put any of my people on any lists in the future. And she wasn't angry about it. I think she was more sad that one of her people had been basically jammed in this mass jamming. And it was all. I think it was really all about one guy. I think even the Sad Puppies, us, we were annoying to them. The person they wanted to really go after was Theodore Beale, again, a.k.a. Vox Day. That's the guy they were really, really furious with. They were mad at me, and I think they were kind of tangentially mad at Larry for being the guy who started all this. But Vox Day was the guy that they had to get no matter what. They were going to stick the fork in his eye no matter what, and along the way they stuck a fork in Carrie English's eye, and they stuck a fork in Mike Resnick's eye, and they stuck a fork in Sheila Williams's eye, and they stuck a fork in Tony Weiskopf's eye, and they stuck a fork in Michael Flynn's eye. All these authors and editors and artists all had a fork stuck in their eye, and then they cheered about it. And then they have the nerve to wonder why people, again, that big eyeball of the big world looking in, says, wow, that was incredibly childish and selfish, and holy crap, what are you guys doing? And then they go, oh, well, we had to do it. It's just ludicrous. Again, it's so junior high, it's so immature. I didn't think they would stoop this low. I had no idea. I thought maybe a few hundred at most would be this childish about it, but apparently 2,500 people decided to be childish all at once, and then they cheered themselves. And it's in my opinion, it has taken the Hugo way past any prior low that ever happened in their zealotry to get even with Vox Day or to kick back at the puppies. They completely blew up their own thing. It's I kind of I'm at a loss for words even when I think about it, really.
And I actually would just like to repeat for the audience that what the Sad Puppies did was just get fans voting and get more fans involved in the process. Created a list of fan recommendations, did the legwork to get people involved. That's it. There's nothing sinister that happened, and this is something that's happened before, and even more opaquely, not as transparently as this. I mean, it would be equivalent to people saying that a group of people starting to campaign to get people voting for Democrats or something, or not even Democrats, just get people voting. Period. Is somehow slanting the democratic process because they've got more people voting who otherwise would have abstained. No, that's not how it works.
Well, the sad thing is that people do say that about get out the vote campaigns if they're associated with a political party, even if those political parties don't necessarily focus on people that are going to vote for their party. The thing that this reminds me of is Gamergate, actually, the block bot, and how it is set up so that people who follow Gamergate accounts on Twitter end up blocked as well. It's guilt by association, and that's what happened to these authors that were sort of blocked out of getting awards by this no vote. Was that they were ascribed or given guilt by association. They didn't have an objection to the authors themselves. They had an objection to the people who were supporting them.
Well, it's not just that they went so far as to call it ballot stuffing in the media. They're like, they stuffed the ballot box. They stuffed it. But no, they encouraged people to vote.
If that ballot box thing, so is all political campaigning. All political, even just an ad that says I stand for X, Y, Z, and my opponent is against X, Y, Z, so you should vote for me. Ballot stuffing.
It sounds like what really angered the people who are basically outing themselves as a political clique because of this no reward thing, even against their own stated principles of diversity, even against people who have been up nominated for an award before. These individuals, it sounds like what they're really upset about is that you guys are right. You do have more popularity. You are able to mobilize more people.
As far as the charge of ballot stuffing, they're actually accusing that which they would be guilty of. In reality, if they're controlling the ballot themselves and they're just mad that they lost control of it, who's ballot stuffing?
Go ahead, Brad.
That's been one of the very Orwellian things we've discovered. I put a big blog post up on my blog today, just kind of recounting my experience going into amateur politician mode with Sad Puppies. There was so much that I was in for at the beginning of the year that I didn't really realize, and I feel like I've learned a lot, and I've taken a lot of heat, and I've lost some friendships. I've had some people turn on me and ditch me, and worse. And but the fact that people were willing to pretty brazenly accuse us of wrongdoing and then immediately do that very same thing and do it to the level that they did it, and act like they don't realize. I mean, really, there's such a cognitive dissonance in that whole approach, to point your finger and say you're bad because you're doing this thing, and then to turn around and do it yourself and then do it times 50 and punish a whole bunch of people who weren't even wanting to be connected to anything. And then to stand there with a straight face and act like, well, what? And I'm just like, oh my gosh, do you people have the emotional IQ of turnips? Do you not realize what this looks like? I run out of words. I really do.
Well, I wanted to actually talk a bit about George R.R. Martin's response, and just specifically, we don't have to go at length, but he accused you guys of potentially no voting for those categories where you didn't sweep the nomination. And he even said, from the comments I've seen on puppy blogs, a lot of puppies will be no awarding this category. But when I just wanted you to clarify whether or not you actually advocated for no awarding or just discussed it.
I personally hated the idea of no awarding. In my opinion, I wish they would get rid of that option. To me, if somebody makes the ballot, the final ballot, they're on the final ballot. They should be considered. You don't have to like the story. That's fine. If you don't like something, put it at the bottom as number 5, or just leave it off entirely. I think no award is the refuge of snobs, and clearly it's the refuge of people who want to make a political point. I think that's why it's on there in the first place. It didn't always used to be on there. It was added. That's the other thing we've learned through this whole process is exactly how many times the Hugo selection process has been tinkered with by people who are motivated for various reasons. Sometimes it's political, sometimes it's selfish, sometimes it's a publisher. There's all kinds of people who have tinkered with this over the years, and no award is one of those options that was put in there. And for that thing to be used, George, it's interesting how George really does not like sad puppies at all. And he's been especially critical of me by name several times on his blog when I've tried to argue some of this stuff with him. But George was straight up. He said, I think no award should be used extremely carefully. He called it a scalpel, not a bludgeon. And then George's own side, if I can dare call this a side, turned right around and used it as a bludgeon. Now, I don't know what George thinks of that. We might get George to speak on it at some point, or he might just come out on his own and say what he thinks of it. My hunch is that George might agree with the sentiment that was used, but he probably is somewhat appalled at the fact that it was used in such a grand nuclear scale. And again, I don't think anybody who chose to go nuclear in the way they went nuclear has any idea the larger message that sends out into the world. Again, the thing I keep telling people who keep trying to run victory laps is, you know what, guys? Maybe if you cheer a little harder, Michael Rothman's kids will magically love you. Because I keep coming back to that. I'm just like, you know what? You had some completely clean, unaware, unbiased spectators watching you do this. They were ready to become part of your community. And you talk this big talk about how you love people and you're inclusive and you want to make this a happy, loving community, and then you had some blank slates sitting there in the auditorium with you, and you went ahead and you blew it up, and you spoiled it. You ruined it for these boys, and they're never gonna. Their opinion. It's that old saying: you only get one chance to make a first impression. And the first impression that fandom made on these boys and so many other people is the worst possible impression you could make. And many of them don't even realize it. I think some of them possibly do, but a lot of them don't. And again, that goes back to lack of emotional IQ.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Oh,
I just like to point out that one of the things that's nauseating me in the post-Hugo thing, and the thing that made the entire sad display just nauseating and infuriating, and was this, because they keep saying, we love science fiction, we love diversity, we love and welcome new people. We don't understand why fandom keeps getting older and smaller. And by fandom, of course, they mean people who attend Worldcon. But when you actually go there, and I had this experience, and I stopped going to Worldcon. I only went like 3 times. They have their cliques and they have the people they know, and it's not that they mean to give you the cold shoulder, I think, but you're implicitly given the cold shoulder because you're new. And then this ridiculous display. I mean, I'm willing to believe that when you go, because they are a group who've known each other for years, you feel like an outsider and it's not their fault. I'm willing to believe that. But then we find out that, you know, yes, we love all science fiction, unless it's liked by people we don't like, in which case we'll no award it. Or you know, we'll boo it. Or we'll treat nominees who are bestsellers and we don't know their politics as complete pariahs because they were nominated by people we don't like. Or just all sorts of ridiculous. They have all these exclusionary rules. It's kind of like you see a club you'd kind of like to join, and all over the door there's these signs saying, we're welcoming, foreign languages spoken, we love everyone, just come in, we love the things you love. And you go in and you say, hi, my name is Sarah and I like chocolate, and the world comes down on your head. You like chocolate? You horrible person, out with you into the outer darkness where there shall be gnashing of teeth. Seriously, that's what that presented. And then in the post you go, victory laps, they're still talking about love won. And I keep thinking that word doesn't mean what you think it means.
Their idea involves that oh-so-phallic award and their asterisk. That's what they think love is about.
Well, again, I think there's a great deal of self-regard in that particular paradigm, if I can use the word paradigm. Again, it's people that they are in love with their picture of themselves as being loving, warm, open. Oh, we love everybody. But again, that is it's a patina. It's a created perception, a self-perception that is a false self-perception. And I've experienced the same thing as Sarah. You know, when I went to my first Worldcon, I had been really looking forward to it a lot. Many people had really kind of built up my expectations about what this thing was going to be. And I went in 2011, and I went again in 2012. And in 2012, I was really hoping that my first impressions of the first one were going to be better. Or let me rephrase that. That if I took another sip of the glass, that it would taste better. Let me put it that way, if that makes sense. You know, because I wasn't really thrilled with it the first time. It didn't, you know, again, there were too many instances where it was clear the people I was talking to were evaluating me, trying to figure out, you know, am I even somebody who should be allowed to be part of the cool kid conversations? And there were way too many people who were, you know, trying to figure out, you know, which one of the little cliques, the inside cliques, was I with. And I really walked away with it with kind of a sour taste in my mouth because unless I knew some of the specific people beforehand, like many of the authors at Analog Magazine, they of course welcomed me openly. That was not a problem. The Baen people, I wasn't even publishing with Baen in 2011 or 2012. They welcomed me openly. But when I would go specifically to some of the parties that some of the publishers would run, like Tor, or if I went to the SIFWA suite, which was the suite open to all members of the Science Fiction Writers of America. I'm not a member anymore. I walked out of that organization 2 years ago. You know, you would walk into these environments and it was like the air would suddenly drop 20 degrees in temperature because instantly you had eyes on you and they were trying to figure out your shit. And it was like, is this supposed to be a party or am I at like a political screening, you know? And that just kept happening over and over. And then it happened 2 years in a row and I kind of thought, you know what, this is not fun. I was there for business purposes, obviously, and I wanted to have fun. I really wanted to like love it the way people say you should love it, and I didn't end up loving it. And the more I see them celebrate themselves as this wonderful community, you know, perhaps for them it is, you know, for the people that are on the inside and they have the right politics and they have the right friends, it probably is wonderful for them because it's a bunch of mirrors. It's all of them reflecting back to each other themselves. But coming in from the outside into that, it's not fun, and it's not loving, in my opinion. It really isn't.
Madcat, did you want to ask your question? Sorry, are we having a bit of a traffic jam? Go ahead, Madcat. Oh, I think we're having some issues with sound.
Sorry, my Hannah's mute button is attacking me. So I was wondering to the writers here, has the Hugo Awards ever been about awarding people of merit, or has it always been political like we see today?
It was not nearly this political early on. In the very early years, it was far less political. It has, particularly the last 20 years or so, it's become extremely politicized, which, funnily enough, coincides with the drop in interest, attendance, and the rest of it.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, once you start making these little cliques, it seems to just permeate the entire atmosphere, and you stop wanting to be part of it because you just don't know when I was in Gamergate in BC, I talked about these invisible barriers of uncertainty where you just don't know what's expected of you or how you're supposed to act, but you do know if you get it wrong, you're going to be ostracized. And I told people, we shouldn't acknowledge these things. We should just walk right into them. But when they exist in a community, they shut it down, and it just gets smaller and smaller and more insular because there's nothing actually more frightening than that kind of uncertainty, and it's not fair.
Yes, in a way, I'm lucky because I knew beforehand that this was what I was walking into, so I was in a position to decide, well, screw that. I'm going to be who I am and what I am, and they can take it or leave it. And if they don't like it, well, these are two very nice middle fingers that they can sit on and rotate.
Oh, actually, yes. Go ahead, Sarah, if it's right.
What you were describing, Allison, is a lot like we talked about this feeling on a group blog we have, Mad Genius Club. We're actually all on madgeniusclub.com. And we talked about it, and one of our commenters, Julie, made the perfect analogy. And that's someone who has been in that situation in conditions I'm not willing to share. She got it exactly right. It's like being an abused child or an abused spouse, and you're just casually crossing a room, and suddenly they're on you, and they smack you, and they go, "Why did you step on that square?" And you look down, and all the squares look exactly alike, and you're going, well, and they go, "That square there, you know exactly which square, and you know you're not supposed to step on it." And you start apologizing, and that's taken as, of course you knew what the square was, and they smack you more. And then they say, "We love you, just don't step on that square." And you start walking, and it's like, "Why aren't you walking across the room?" So you start walking again, and you don't know why you shouldn't step on that square and what the square is. And of course, abusers don't have a reason. They just change the square arbitrarily because that gives them power, and that's what they want.
It's an exercise in control, and what these cliques do is they turn a fandom and a community into an exercise of control and feeling control over others. And I'm going to step out of the way so Rachel can finally speak.
Yes. Well, to prepare for all this, I was looking over the various articles that were covering you guys and the situation with the Hugos. And the thing is that talking to you guys and seeing what they've written is like night and day. And that's something I think should be addressed, because if you ask them what you guys all are basically white male oppressors who just want to vote in more white men, more straight white heterosexual men who are conservative, and that's basically the narrative. And it's so weird that it's just, well, maybe it's not weird, but it's just it doesn't seem to be coincidence. I mean, what do you think you would attribute to that narrative being so strong across the board with so many different people?
It's their go-to. Anyone who steps outside the line is in favor of white male, because white male is their ultimate evil. It's kind of like being a wealthy Jew in Germany in the 1930s and early 1940s. You know, that makes you really evil. And so anybody who is even slightly evil gets the same tag, even if your assets suggest that no, you cannot possibly be male.
And they use the narrative that they really pushed Vox Day towards the front and called him every name under the sun. I don't really know much about him in particular, but if you went by what they said, he's basically worse than Hitler. So, as well. I have no opinion because I know almost nothing about him. So.
Well, as a fellow person who is also worse than Hitler.
Well, yes. Sarah and I together are the worst person in the world. We have been so proclaimed.
Yes, I want to point out, Kate and I are the evil that cannot be contained in a single body.
It's like the Voltron of evil.
Yeah.
Like an evil gestalt.
Although
we disagreed with the leftist, and she said that we were the worst person in the world. We've been laughing at, and in history. So, just so you know, Sarah and I confuse us because we're obviously the same person in two bodies. Kate and I are worse than Caligula, worse than Hitler, worse than Stalin.
Worse than
What amazing.
Worse than Mao. Worse than anyone ever.
Because we disagreed with the blog on the other side.
Oh my. Yeah, like I said, I'm familiar with those feelings and those words, worse than anyone ever, because you disagree. That's something that I'm familiar with. But if you guys do you want to? What we've done is Mad Cat has compiled the votes for the Hugos and has figured out who would have won if the No Awards hadn't happened. Did you want to have him give out his results and maybe have a discussion on that, because it's got he has some interesting findings. So.
Oh yes, that would be wonderful.
All right, Mad Cat, cue it up.
Okay, first I want to say that it's a great honor to talk to so many of the authors here. I'm an author myself, and it's a great honor to read this list. So I'll just give a very short presentation. This year we had 5 #1 No Awards. Now the No Awards started in 1959, but the last one was given out in 1977. In that time, only 5 #1 No Awards were given out. And in this year, we represented all of that history. Additionally, 8 other No Awards were given out throughout the other places that people could receive. So we're still kind of working on the name, but we're going to be calling these the Honey Puppy Awards for people who should have won the Hugo Awards. Now, I don't really know who among these names are sad puppies, rabid puppies, social justice warriors, and I really don't care, because what's important is the merit of their work, and that's what the Hugos always was supposed to be about. So when I read this list, I'm reading who got the most votes. Now, the other thing also is that if you look on the show notes page, I did list for honorable mentions the other people that were affected by the No Awards. I'm not going to read them now, but I will be doing an article on the Honey Badger Brigade website detailing how I figured all of this out, and also who those other peoples that were affected. One small note that I'll name is that while there were 5 people who didn't get any award at all in certain categories, there were some people that I feel got an award because of political reasons, because of the outstanding number of votes they received, versus the no awards. But I'll explain that all in my article. Enough delaying of time, I'm going to go ahead and just read these out real quick. So this is the number 1 spot, the people who should have won the award. For 2015 Best Novella, should have gone to Flow by Arlen Andrews Sr. Best Short Story, Totaled by Carrie English. Best Related Work, The Hot Equations, Thermodynamics and Military Science Fiction by Ken Burnside. Best Editor, Short Form, should have gone to Mike Resnick. Best Editor, Long Form, should have gone to Tony Wiskopf. I know you said that earlier, but I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Professional Artist, Kirk Duaponce. Ponce, I don't know how to pronounce that. Fan Writer, Jeffro Johnson. And the John W. Campbell Award should have gone to Carrie English.
Okay, just to clarify, because I think that was more than, was that more than the actual no awards given? Because I thought the no awards were in, just double check here.
Well, there were 5 given out, but as I mentioned, there were some others that I thought that, based on the numbers that I saw, and I looked through a lot of numbers, that people were given awards for political reasons and not merit.
Okay, so
unfortunately, with this system, there is no way for me to determine the reason why people voted the way they did.
Yeah.
So I can say with... Oh, sorry. I just want to jump in on the Campbell Award specifically. So the way this works, for people who aren't familiar with it, is it's a preferential balloting system. So anytime you vote on anything at the Hugos, it's a preferential. So you rank a number 1 and a number 2 and a number 3 and a number 4 and a number 5. So if you have 5 things to pick from, you rank them in order of preference, 1 through 5. Now you can selectively put no award anywhere in that selection. So if you like number 1 and number 2, but you don't like any of the others, you can put number 1, number 2, no award, and that's it. What they did with the Campbell is they killed Carrie English with no award by putting the one person who they preferred above no award and putting everyone else below no award. Carrie English earned the Campbell Award, but again, a woman, I want to emphasize this, a woman was punished by the people who claim to be doing this whole song and dance. She was punished. She deserved and should have gotten the Campbell, and she was punished. She was placed below no award. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mad Cat.
Well, and what you're describing there, Brad, is exactly the reason why I changed 3 of these, because people won like by a large margin, like 60% of the votes, which is statistically impossible in my opinion, went to these number 1 people, and then 95% of their votes went to no award. And that just seems very fishy to me, and I will explain it all in my article, how I made these conclusions, so people can see if I'm right on track or if I made any mistakes anywhere. So that's really all I have to say on this.
Okay, well, I mean, absolutely transparency, and people can discuss this and decide for themselves what should have happened. But these are, again, the people who should have won the no award categories if the no award hadn't actually been used to nuke the Hugos. Do you guys have any final statements that you want to say before we get into? I'd like to get into the future of where you see the Sad Puppies going in the future. But before that, do you guys have any final statements on this Hugo and the Sad Puppies up to this time? Brad, Kate, and Sarah. Anyone?
I guess I'll go first. The future is pretty murky. I think, again, I did not expect them to do what they did. I thought there might be a few hundred at best that would be this nasty. I didn't think that 2,500 people would just all together decide to be jerks. Uh, Walking away from that, I'm like, you know what? For me personally, that is not a culture that I can respect. I really can't. It's like Tony when she walked out at the ceremony. I have gone to great lengths arguing with this culture. I have done so much to try to be ambassadorial with this culture. And this thing they've done, to me personally, the sourness will never go away. And of course, the other side will say, well, you guys made us do it. And I'm just like, you know what? No. You guys don't get to play the game of the abuser. You don't get to claim that anybody made you do this. You did this, and you screwed over a whole bunch of people who didn't deserve to be screwed over, and you're not going to blame it on anyone but yourselves. And again, I don't want anything to do with a culture that's going to vote against people. The No Award vote was a vote against people. It was not a vote for people. It was not a vote for propriety. It was a vote against people. People lost on Saturday night. And I don't want to be part of anything that celebrates voting against people the way they did. And so I look at that, again, I look at Michael Rothman's boys as again, they're the canary in the coal mine. They walked away, and they're not going to come back. And that's going to keep happening and keep happening and keep happening. And all the old timers are going to either die off or go away themselves. And all you're going to be left with is a hardened, nasty little core of very politically motivated, very politically agitated, very politically snipey people. And that's not a community. At least that's not a community I would recognize and want to be part of. And I don't think that very many people would want to be part of it either. I know many longtime Worldcon attendees have been talking to each other because I've seen some of the emails saying, you know what, I didn't like Sad Puppies at all. I thought Sad Puppies was a bad idea, but nothing justified no awarding and nuking it the way it was done. Nothing justified that. They are not happy. They are very embarrassed. They're very upset. They're starting to question whether they want to be part of this thing. Again, I don't think the people who cheered really understand what's happened, and I don't have any kind of hope that there's going to be a light at the end of that tunnel. I really don't. Not unless there's a wholesale cultural change, and the only way that's going to happen is if they get a personality shift. Stick them in the helmet and change their swap their personalities, because it's not going to get better. I just don't see it's going to get better. They cheered that the cake got thrown on the floor. They cheered that people lost. People who cheer that people lose, I don't know where that goes. And I'm at a loss for words. And that's where I'm at, guys.
Sarah, Kate, final words? At least on the proceedings up to this point.
Well, actually, looking forward, I was actually going to talk about moving forward a bit towards the next year.
Actually, if you guys are done with if you feel that Brad has concluded, sure. Let's look forward.
I just wanted to mention that you mentioned Michael Rothman, and it's not just him. I've been getting, yesterday I wasted my afternoon in between filling in papers to put a house for sale, just answering emails on Facebook because I didn't feel I could leave these people hanging. People I don't know who had never contacted me saying the same thing he said. We went to Worldcon. We just don't think it's for us. And that's sad and heartbreaking. And some of them are furious, and some of them are just sad. Okay, Kate.
Okay, the sneak preview for the next round of sad puppies. Basically, there aren't enough people. It is an award that calls itself the most prestigious, the greatest, the People's Award. And it gets barely more than 2,000 people nominating. And what did it end up being? About 4,500, 5,000 to 6,000 actually voting. That's obviously not nearly enough. You need to have tens of thousands, more than tens of thousands, so that you've got much, much less chance for anybody, including us, to dominate. And the goal is to get a lot more people nominating and a lot more people interested and a lot more people involved. And, you know, we're calling it the embiggening, although the way Sarah and I have been lately, it's more likely the embitchening.
Yay!
So, you know, we want to see more. Lots more. More people involved, more voting, more people going to the business meetings and voting down the stupid ideas to make things even worse. More people challenging control, because you don't get a healthy anything when it's run by a tiny little clique that never looks past its own backside. And I don't care what the politics of anything being suggested is. I'm not looking towards any kind of political list. I'm not looking to a slate. I am just looking towards, hey, these are the most popular works in this particular category that people who have followed the blog posts I've made and the Facebook posts and everything have suggested. That's all I am going to do. These are the most popular. If you want to see your favourite works nominated, your best bet is to choose from the most popular ones by those people than from the least popular. That's all it's going to be. I don't care if the Nielsen Haydens end up on there somehow. Although I might worry about the people who nominate them. I don't care if George R.R. Martin shows up on there. I don't care if David Gerald is on there. I don't care. I'm looking towards listing what people who read the Bad Genius Club, who read Sarah's blog, who read anything else that will actually have me and let me post my spiel. I'm looking for what is most popular in those places amongst those readers and those listeners, and just listing that as a kind of public service and trying to get more people involved, because, you know, an award that, if you look at their public figures, in 2008 or 2007, I don't recall exactly which year it was, but the first year they posted the detailed numbers, they had fewer than 500 people deciding who got nominated for what. Is it any wonder that this little clique could take control? Any little clique can do it.
Can I make a suggestion? Maybe what the Hugos need is like a bit vote, like some open source, like transparent, like a way of calibrating. You know, people go in, they log their vote. Maybe it logs IP addresses, and you have to read the story, log your and then it just completely openly and transparently logs how many people voted for that particular story, and it's outside of anybody's direct control. And
that would be awesome.
You know, and if anybody out there in Gamergate or is a programmer, maybe that's what we need. We need a bit or vote bit. Something to get it just as completely. All it is just tallying people's votes for what they want to see at the Hugos, and then you can publish that slate and see what they do with that. at the Hugos. Like seriously, that would be just keep it completely transparent. Program it up. All you do is you log in, it just logs the IP address, logs your vote, and there's nobody touches it, nothing more than that. And I wonder what they would do to that at the Hugos next year if someone did that.
Oh, they would freak.
Yeah,
They would be totally panic. I would be even more the worst person in the world, although how I can manage that when Sarah and I are already the worst person.
It's social justice, mathematical logic.
Well, these people don't do math. They get triggered by the idea that something has to be correct.
Mm-hmm. But seriously, like I've been thinking about Gamergate does all kinds of campaigns against particular media outlets, just to and they're justifiable, but they're in a lot of ways they're negative. They're saying, well, if you do this, if you engage in these unethical breaches, then you're going to get this kind of punishment. This is a much more positive thing. Create a transparent system to vote for the Hugos, and create a popular vote for the Hugos. Have the results displayed, and have people vote based on that. Nominate based on that. I mean, it's so positive, and it's uplifting because you're actually you're actually saying to people, hey, your work is good. I enjoyed it. I really appreciate you having created this work. So I think it was something that would be great if Gamergate got involved in, just to do something, fun and positive and totally apolitical, because everybody, it's open source. Everybody can see how it's tallied.
I can say that the Gamergaters who have come to my blog and identify themselves as such seem younger and a lot of fun.
The thing, here's the thing though, George R.R. Martin has decided, based on I don't know what evidence, that all Gamergaters are horrible, evil, woman-hating, terrible people, and this is
I certainly am.
And this is the common sentiment that you will find throughout the old guard of the science fiction establishment. They have all decided in unison that all Gamergaters are evil and nasty and horrible. And yes, you're all men, none of you are women. All your vaginas have been confiscated. You're all horrible.
You know what? You just have to be a person who doesn't as much define themselves by what other people think of them.
I'll just sit here and cultivate my neck beard.
Yeah, Hannah's combing out her neckbeard as we speak.
I think we need to get more of those gay white Mormon men with great racks badges.
I'm not quite. I almost saw like a dwarf when you were saying that. Like dwarfs women are supposed to have beards and breasts. Something.
They are dwarf women.
Oh, I think this is a good place to end off on. What do you think?
Place is back.
They're often confused for dwarf men.
Some of us are a little tall for dwarves.
Not Allison, she's fun-sized. She fits in those overhead compartments.
I might have to be a troll.
I'm Mediterranean and over 50. All I have to do is not use the hair removal wax for a week, and trust me, I could be.
Could be a dwarven woman?
Yes!
There we go.
Yeah. Well, apparently it's good for grip, so there you go.
We've got the Brian Gimli impersonations out. This is a good place, I think.
Yeah, I think Brian, we're ready to go. I'll just do I'll do my thing. I'll usher.
What's the Elvish word for friend, Brian?
I can do that.
What's the Elvish word for friend?
All right, so here on Honey Badger Radio, what we want to do is we want to bring more voices to the conversation. We want to give a platform to more people, because the reality is a society where there is no disagreement is not a healthy society. And we want to challenge these one-party systems, just like the Sad Puppies did. And there needs to be disagreement. There needs to be diversity in political opinion. And the reality is, like I said, we not only do we need diversity in political opinion, I'd like to challenge those people who want to squash diversity in political opinion to consider the nature of discrimination. The reason why we protect certain groups of people, or we consider very carefully discrimination against certain groups of people, is because they have experienced it in the past. And in the past, discrimination has been based on skin color, in all different ways, on ethnicity, on your cultural factors, on your gender, on your sexual orientation. We've seen discrimination based on physical features and physical aspects of our being. But discrimination also happens based on what people believe. And in a lot of ways, our beliefs are a part of us in the same way that our physical features are a part of us. They're a function of the way we think about the world. They're a function of the experiences we've had. And they need to be respected. They need to be understood. When they lead to behavior that's bad, necessarily we have to say that is bad behavior, of course, but doesn't justify discrimination based on somebody's beliefs. So if you're the kind of person who wants to bring more people together, wants to end this kind of discrimination against belief, wants to see everyone, regardless of political stripe, at least recognize each other as human, even if they disagree, then this is the place for you. And I hope that you listen, you support us, you help us out, and you help us make this platform bigger. And I just want to thank everybody who's joined us, and give Brian the final word.
All right, then. Why go around an ideology when you can go through it? Please go to www.patreon.com/HoneyBadgerRadio to support our efforts. We have salted pork.
You, sir, are a dork.